going to share some slides about applied anthropology. There's some things I want to add or at least emphasize in contrast to what you get in the textbook, though Kotak gives a really good overview of different ways that anthropology can be applied and some of the challenges with that. I want to emphasize in particular anthropology's role in helping us address some of the pressing humanitarian challenges in the world and have you think about how an anthropologist would go beyond just studying a culture and some challenges within that culture and actually working for change in some way. The picture here is a slum outside of the capital city of Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. This is a place where I've spent time, and a place that has its own challenges from air pollution to poor sanitation. Anthropologists can work for change to improve people's lives, whether it's through lobbying and sharing their research with government agencies or supporting grassroots movements within those communities and helping to bring resources to locals who are fighting for change. Here are some ideas of where anthropologists could direct their efforts. So some of these are problems that you are familiar with. Spreading or slowing the spread, not spreading coronavirus, slowing the spread of coronavirus. With their emphasis on culture, for example, an anthropologist could do a study of, what makes some people not want to wear masks, right? Or, what makes it hard for some groups of people to follow some of the public health guidelines that could help us limit the spread of coronavirus, right? With their cultural expertise, they could do research and then go on to draft specific recommendations for new public health programs, right, based on that research. An important distinction between applied anthropology and regular academic applied anthropology is that applied anthropology needs to work for broader outcomes beyond just increasing knowledge. So if you're just raising awareness about an issue, say, for example, an anthropologist studies Black Lives Matter and writes a book explaining some of the values and concerns and talking about that movement, arguing that it's important and it's needed, for example. Writing a book or writing articles and raising awareness about issues is not applied anthropology. Applied anthropology would be taking further steps to take action on an issue. And again, you could be aligning yourself with people in the BLM movement, or you could be doing policy work. You could be calling up your Congress people to lobby about certain issues, right? But there would be something more. Applied anthropology, of course, obviously also involves anthropology, and sometimes good work that happens related to humanitarian challenges doesn't really incorporate anthropology's perspective on culture and emic understandings and anthropological research methods, right? So you can have good work, and I'm not diminishing it at all. I'm just saying you could have good work that's applied, but it's not necessarily applied anthropology unless there's some anthropological basis, right? Today I'm going to talk about Robin Reinecke and her work. She is a cultural anthropologist, but would you call her work applied anthropology? I'll let you decide that based on this previous slide of, is it applied and is it really anthropology? You'll decide. Robin Reinecke is in Tucson, Arizona. She and I went to grad school together at University of Arizona. That's how I know her. And she has been an activist um, concerned with the problem of migrant mortality. So this is migrants who cross the border from Mexico into the southern United States and are um, are killed or die on their journey after they cross the border. This is a very big problem, as I'll get to in just a moment here. I'll give you some background. This is what the border looks like in southern Arizona, bordering on Sonora, Mexico. Even though Trump came to office saying we need to build a wall, actually a lot of wall and or fence did exist along the border even prior to that, prior to Trump. So this is a pre-existing fence. Um, this is pretty far out in the desert, far away from towns and cities. And since 1999, um, more migrants have been crossing into the US way out in the desert because in 1999, border security increased a lot. And so the places where people had crossed earlier, um, closer to towns and closer to border checkpoints, it became harder and harder for them to do that without getting caught. And I'm not saying that this border security is wrong. I'm just saying, from the migrants' perspectives, it became more challenging. And that led to people crossing out in the desert and to increased mortality. And by the way, these pictures, this is me in the green sweatshirt. I was on a little volunteer day trip and we were picking up trash along the border. When people come, they usually come in small groups. They have paid a guide called a coyote who is familiar with the route. They paid him a really considerable amount of their savings to be able to be led. Um, a lot of people are picked up by Border Patrol that has vehicles and also helicopters patrolling the border. Um, and they might make the journey multiple times. Right? They have a long journey on foot after crossing the border to reach a place where they can get more provisions and relax a little bit more. And so they're carrying as much water as they can, and they are dropping trash along the way. Water bottles, of course, but also other things, clothing and other things. So we were picking up trash, but we were also there for educational purposes, just to learn more about what the border is like, and feel what it's like to be there at the border, and imagine what it's like for migrants to cross the border. Okay, so in this map in southern Arizona, the little red dots are where migrant remains were found, human remains were found by Border Patrol or hikers or people living in the area or others. So there are a lot of deaths. I'm going to show you a web page here. Okay, this is humaneborders.info. And this is an interactive GIS. So if I knew the name of someone who had died and I wanted to know where their remains were found, I could type their name in here and pull that up. A lot of people have never been identified, so we don't know their name. But I can look at other things on this map. For example, female, how many women's remains have been found? Let's see, have any women's remains been found in 2020? And I will search and okay, I see several as I scroll around in southern Arizona. So just in this year, just women, and women are the minority of border crossers. Yeah, women's remains have been found. And if I scroll down, I can see what details we know about them. So this does a little bit to put a human face on this humanitarian challenge. Some of the women were unidentified. a couple of them were identified, right? Robin Reinecke, this anthropologist I'm talking about today, she does what she does in order to bring closure to the families of missing migrants. Even though she's a cultural anthropologist and not a biological or forensic anthropologist, she's trying to help with um, with the identification, because regardless of whether they were doing something illegal by crossing in or not, right? These are all people with families who have lost their lives, right? So that's what drives her. Um, it's a few more images. The Missing Migrant Project, which Robin co-founded, and then some images, a body being recovered, and some of the items found on a body, clues that anthropologists like Robin and others would use to try to match bodies with the descriptions that families are giving her. It's not necessarily going to be super straightforward for you as you listen to a radio interview with Robin, but I'm going to have you listen to this, have her talk about her work and how she uses her expertise as an anthropologist might not be especially straightforward. So you're going to have to read between the lines. You're going to have to imagine, what are the skills, methods, or perspectives that she's drawing on from her background as a trained cultural anthropologist to do this work. Okay. The link is here, but I'm going to post it to Moodle also and have you listen to this little radio interview where Robin talks about her work and think about how she applies that anthropology. These are a couple of my ideas, but you might have others as well. So I would argue that this is an example of applied anthropology because she does draw on some anthro perspectives, and her work does have some broader impacts. But see what you can add here. And also, you might not agree with me, and you don't have to. Okay, thanks.